Back with Jin, he asks the caller if Major Kang is in danger. The caller confirms that Kang is indeed in danger. And by the way, the one who called our boy is Yeona's grandfather and SW Corporation's director. According to their sources, Major Kang and his men were ambushed by armed forces during their mission. They're being chased by the enemy and are forced to engage in combat. Meanwhile, the military is preparing to extricate Major Kang and his troops. The director further explains that he's sharing this information because he knows Jin has a close relationship with Major Kang. Jin quickly catches on and realizes that if the director felt the need to inform him, it likely means the chances of Kang's survival aren't very promising. The old man sadly agrees, saying he called Jin to prepare him for the worst. Jin remains silent, and the caller advises him not to jump to any rash conclusions and to leave the matter in the hands of the military. He reminds Jin to keep in mind that he has a family to think about now. At the end, our boy agrees and ends the call. As he stands there, his mind flashes back to memories with Major Kang. In the infirmary, Kang, with a big grin, reminds his fellow soldiers that he had already told them that Jin was Korean, and indeed, he is. The other injured soldiers happily chime in, and they all find it really hard to believe, and they wonder if Jin has actually gotten his memories back. Once Jin was sitting alone, Major Kang approached him and told him to take his time and not force himself to remember anything. He then asked Jin if Jin Yu was his real name, which Jin confirmed right away. In another memory, Jin and his colleagues are in the game room, struggling to win a single game. The atmosphere is lighthearted and filled with despair as they continue to lose one game after another. In one particularly vivid memory, Major Kang comes rushing in with excitement and hastily reveals to Jin that they have found his family. He explains that they discovered Jin has a grandfather and a younger sister. Our boy remains quiet and seemingly unshocked, but his other friends are overjoyed. They smile and congratulate him warmly, and they are happy for him that he will be now able to lead a normal life once again. In the present moment, Jin feels a pang of sadness from the news about Major Kang. He's lost in his thoughts when Daeon calls him for dinner, and Grandpa reminds him to hurry before the food gets cold. Jin finally exits his room and stands silently. The others are puzzled to see his unusual behavior, and ask if he's not going to take his seat. Jin snaps out of his contemplation and eagerly sits down next to his sister. As they settle in, Grandpa shares that the other guards are envious that his grandkids come to eat with him. Daeon finds it odd that anyone would be jealous about that and assumes all kids visit their grandparents. But sadly, the old man shares that's not the case, and none of the other grandkids visit as often as she does. Daeon is pleasantly surprised and excitedly declares that she'll visit again soon with lunchboxes. Meanwhile, Jin isn't quite in sync with the current mood. He suddenly calls out to Grandpa, who asks what's on his mind. Jin asks how Grandpa feels about helping someone who once helped him. The old man thinks for a moment and replies that there's no simple answer. It depends on the nature of the help he received and how he can offer assistance in return. What is clear is that the person who helped you had a lot more to lose and didn't expect anything in return while helping. He further explains that the true value of a kind deed is not measurable, and eventually Jin will find that there will come a time when he needs to repay someone for their kindness. All in all, if you can't help someone entirely, you should at least try his best to return the favor. Grandpa starts feeling a bit embarrassed after his heartfelt words, and apologizes if he rambled too much, because he's not the best at putting perspectives into words. Jin simply responds that he understands everything very well, and is genuinely glad to have met someone like Grandpa. The old man looks unsure from where all this flattery is coming from, but he thanks his grandson, and states that hearing Jin's words means a lot to him. Suddenly Daeon notices her brother looking at her, and Jin also tells her that he's also glad to have a sister like her. Daeon goes silent for a moment, then blushes deeply, because she is not the type to handle this much flattery all at once. Later, once Jin gets into the room, he talks to his senior, and lets him know that he is going to help Major Kang, and he appeals to his senior to please make any arrangements if he can. Well, it seems like the director isn't too sure about sending our guy into the fight, but it looks like he doesn't really have a choice. The next scene cuts back to the woods, where we see Major Kang completely exhausted, taking deep breaths to catch his breath. He then instructs everyone to rest for a bit and tells one of the soldiers, Seokun, to scan the perimeter, while Jiseok and Suchiol are sent to check how close the enemy is. One of the soldiers speaks up, mentioning that everyone is pretty wiped out, and Gwangsik has lost a lot of blood. But the senior responds that they've got to reach the next checkpoint to wait for rescue. The soldier asks if they can even make it since they're almost out of rations. The senior feels agitated and begins gritting his teeth. The scene then cuts to the enemy base, where one of their soldiers reports to the boss Kang's party is close to giving up. The boss says he's impressed they've lasted this long, and he admits that he would have suffered greater losses if Kang's party would not be burdened with protecting civilians. Plus, Major Kang in his time is also unfamiliar to this land as well, which gives this eye-patch bastard an edge in this fight. Suddenly the man's eye begins to throb under his eye patch, and he can't help but feel agitated as the image of our boy flashes through his mind. Looks like our guy is the one who took this bastard's eye. Later, we see a plane zooming through the skies, and inside, our boy sits in his soldier uniform, gun in hand. It's clear he's familiar with the land he's headed to. You see, this region is known as Grian, one of the places where Jin had operated as a mercenary before. Before he boarded the plane, the director's assistant explained that Major Kang and his men were deployed to extricate a group of researchers gathering data on the region's minerals. The rescue mission was successfully underway, but then the troops were ambushed by an unidentified armed force. The assistant also mentioned that they've prepared the list of items our boy requested, and the military forces of both nations have agreed to assist in securing his passage to the region. Lastly, the director himself asks our boy one final question, inquiring if he's absolutely sure about his decision, and Jin quickly replies that he is. With that, we're back in the plane, and the sirens start blaring as they reach the checkpoint. It's finally time for our boy to jump into action.